People who quit a job on the first day. What happened? I worked at Home Bargains and did my first shift on a Saturday. I was off on the Sunday originally, and they waited until 11 p.m. on the Saturday to call me and not ask me but tell me to cover a Sunday. But the conversation went as followed. Hey, we've changed the rota and you're working tomorrow 8 a.m. 5 p.m. I was busy on the Sunday as I had family commitments since I assumed I was free being my day off. Oh, I can't work tomorrow, I have plans. Well, that will go down as an unauthorized absence if you don't turn up. Alright, then I quit. What? I then hung up and never went back. When I was around 14, I worked for Dickie D Ice Cream. Think Canadian good humor. For one day riding a bicycle, cooler. You were paid a commission based on what you sold. But you had to pay for your dry ice. Long story short, you had to ride that thing all day in blazing heat to make virtually no money. This was in the mid-80s. I hope this is illegal now. Landscaping guy wanted me to do cold calling of customers who all had bad experiences and try to convince them to pay for services they didn't need or have, like aerating a xeriscaped lawn. He also wanted me to do all of his accounting in Quicken. Turned out the company was not registered business and has no license to operate. They also threatened us we'd have to pay them an amount if we quit during the 60-day training period. Few months later, they were shut down. I was hired as a cook at a Huddle House. On my first day I learned that they lied about which shifts I'd have in the interview. I'd be expected to basically run the restaurant alone on graveyard shift after only a week of training. And this place was violating health codes left and right. I was working at Zara. They didn't do advertising at the time and instead are very particular about how they set up the store. My last hour was being screamed at by the woman in charge of the store's appearance for not folding clothes fast enough. She was screaming at all of us. Imagine an hour of a woman standing on the top floor alternating between, "Let's go, people," and shouted insults. We finished 15 minutes early, which means we got paid less for doing what the screaming lady wanted. Then we were asked to clock out for a team meeting. We did, and the woman screamed at us so much she drove herself to tears. The woman who hired me apologized on my way out and I told her I wouldn't be back. I didn't even pick up my check. Nor have I ever bought anything from Zara ever again. Even secondhand. I won't do it. I have like a PTSD reaction to that store. Was 19 in the late 90s. Got a job at Miami Subs and showed up to work the first and heard the manager screaming at a couple of 16-year-old cashiers. Said nope, not for me. Told the girls they should quit too. Actually ended up giving them a lift home. They lived close to my friend's house. Fast forward and one of the girls and my friend are married with a couple kids and live in the same town. Small world. Open mouth smile. Second day. Sweating my ass off in the kitchen on a hot summer day. Asked for a glass of water and the owner made me pay for it. Finished my shift and never went back. Joann's Fabrics first day, an old lady slapped me for cutting her fabric too slow. I was like, peace. This isn't the job for me. I took a phone sales job once. It was cold calling people to sell tickets to a country western show to supposedly benefit the local police department. The foreman had me sit next to someone named Joe and said, "Now you watch Joe for a bit and see how he turns the nose into yes." First call, Joe starts his speech and then slams down the phone and shouts, "Fuck." Quote. Second call is pretty much the same and he instead shouts, "Fucking bitch," while slamming down the phone. This goes on for about 3 more calls and then the manager comes over and says, "Okay. So you see how it's done?" Let's get you started. I made about 4 calls and then asked if I could take a smoke break, even though I didn't smoke, and left and never returned. It was the second day on the job, not the first, but close enough. I had left another job to go to this new company with the promise that I wouldn't have to stay late. I was told I would be working basically a 9 to 5, which I was perfectly happy with. That day I didn't get off until 10 p.m. I texted my boss as I got off and said they wouldn't be seeing me again. Got a job with a major hotel brand. Was supposed to handle their small lounge area. Serve the occasional wine, beer. I was 18/19. During my training, the manager dude, mid-30s, was walking me through, showing me how stuff works. He was super friendly and joking a lot, but also a bit touchy-feely. Hand on shoulder, back pats, etc. Then, when we were alone in the kitchen, he reached out his hand and rubbed across my abdomen. I was wearing a light summer dress. Super thin material. He basically touched right above where my panties were, straight up to my belly button and a bit above. I can't remember why it was part of his joking around, but it made me so uncomfortable. I didn't say anything, just awkward laughed. He smiled and stared at me, and then kept up his jokey shtick. I did not return. I heard later he was in rehab for coke. Technically didn't quit the first day, but I was forgotten. Worked at a famous Dutch theme park and was scheduled for 1 day. Showed up that day. Worked the whole day no problem and had quite a bit of fun. Waited to be called in again, and 4 years later I still haven't been called in once. I still have the uniform and guidebook. No one told the staff I would be there. The shift manager seemed annoyed that she would have to train me. It was a dog boarding, daycare facility, and they were slammed. The manager left me alone in the play yard with about 15 dogs that I didn't know for morning potty break. She admitted they weren't supposed to take that many out at once, and not all of them were daycare dogs. I had one dog trying to scale the fence the whole time. A group of 3 dogs kept growling at each other, and one kept howling and stirring everyone up at 5:30 a.m. When she wasn't back in 1,015 minutes, I corralled everyone back into the building, and another staff member helped me get everyone back in their kennels. I went to find the manager and overheard her in the kitchen complaining to someone about getting stuck with me today. I ignored it. Asked what to do next. After morning walks, she showed me where the daycare-only room was. Before and after daycare hours, dogs waiting for their owners would be put in kennels. The room had like 40 nice-size kennels, but the floor was also lined with wire crates and dogs were just shoved in them. There were some kennels and crates with multiple dogs in them, and when I asked, she admitted that but all of them were fur siblings. They just didn't have enough kennels for everyone to get their own. I left on my lunch break. Didn't tell anyone or call to let the supervisor know. I'd previously managed a daycare boarding facility for about 2 years, and it infuriated me to see the way this place handled people's pets. Not a job, but a first-time interview. They disguised the job as just a normal sales position, but when I got to the interview, it was a group interview no one told me about, and there was basically about 15 of us young kids in there that basically had to fight for this job. Mind you, it turned out to be one of those door-to-door salesman jobs selling who knows what. But I left in the middle of the interview because I immediately knew it wasn't for me, and the receptionist at the front got out of her chair to stop me from leaving and said, "You're going to be throwing away your life if you leave, kid," to which I didn't reply and I continued walking out. That company no longer exists to this day. I got hired for the local Taco Bell. On my first day, it was a busy Thursday night and everyone was stressed and yelling at each other. I was asked to come in at 3 but never told when I was supposed to leave, so I asked. Because if I was going to be there for a long time, I also wanted a break. The person in charge wasn't even a manager, and they told me they didn't know what to tell me. Because they don't have a manager right now to make schedules. She mentioned they were open until 3 a.m. and asked me how long I would stay. I got really sketched out, so my next question was about how they were counting for my labor since I was new and wasn't in the computer yet. And there was no manager on site to input my labor manually. She had no idea what I was talking about. I never walked out of somewhere so fast in my life. Worked for a pain management clinic. They didn't let me take a lunch or any type of break. Told me I couldn't wear protection in the X-ray room because that was only for patients and the doctor, and then told me that a lot of the time the doctor is out, so I could just write out the scripts and forge his signature. Obviously I didn't go back. Worked in a menswear shop for a single shift. In my interview they told me I would work a probation period, which is totally normal. The day of my first shift arrives and I find my supervisor very lazily going through procedures and training, which is a red flag. He was skipping over stuff, kind of rushing it, and very clearly didn't want to be there. I go to sign my contract and I notice it says temporary on the top. I told them the job was advertised as permanent, which is illegal. He said, "No, we offer you a permanent contract after you complete this probationary period. We use a temporary contract as a form of probation." Second major red flag, but I stuck with it because I needed a job. Finally, I get out onto the floor and I'm talking to staff. I find out that this company hires young students, sets them really high targets for their probation, and tells them if they hit them they get to stay. Inevitably 99% don't hit these targets and are let go after 23 months. I was being trained by someone whose job I was taking, and it was her last day. It basically means they get the max amount of work out of you and fire you before you slow down, start asking questions. The lady training me said that they also did it to make workers compete with one another. There's no talking on the floor, and loads of employees have petty rivalries because they're all desperate to keep their jobs. I rang up the next day and told them I'm not coming in and they can FCK off. I took a part-time 3RD shift, night audit, position at a hotel. I had worked in hotels for over a decade by then, but at the time I was in another industry and just wanted a side gig. I showed up, started my computer training, which I had been through several times before with the same brand, and ended up looking over the schedule while taking a break. They had one full-time 3RD shifter and 3 other employees for the front desk for the other 2 shifts. 4 people total, plus the manager. That's a huge red flag for as large of a hotel as it was. I could already see 7 a.m. rolling around and my relief not showing up, making me late for my full-time job. I texted the manager right then, 3 a.m., and said this wasn't going to work out. It was a startup advertising agency. My first day I came in and they asked me where my laptop was. They had never told me to bring it, and I thought it was very odd they wanted me to work on a personal device. Luckily I did have it on me due to my classes I was taking nearby. They didn't have me sign any employment paperwork, and my direct supervisor was nowhere to be found. Another employee seemed confused about what to do with me, so she had me go on the company website to review it and learn about some of the work they'd done. So I did that, expecting someone to come eventually and give me some actual training or direction. An hour or so goes by and no one did. I asked other employees who again just looked confused and said they didn't know. I waited for another 2 hours, and when lunchtime came I just took my stuff and left. I never got paid for that day, but I didn't care. It was just so weird.
If you enjoyed this video, Please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Heracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.